Not waiting for Pat. He should be in a second.
we had to go live a little early so Pat could
jump in.
Could work around the technical aspects of this.
Story of my life with Pat. I'm getting ready for events, waiting for Pat.
Hey, you know what? When you get in your, what is he, 32,
33?
I mean, when you get to be ancient like that, you just take your
33. He's 33.
Ancient. Oh my God.
I can say that as a
John,
guy
yeah.
knocking on 50's door.
In this conversation? Because I feel like, Tommy, how old are you?
I'm 37.
Oh, there you go. So he's like the youngest in this conversation. How old are you?
I'm 31.
Oh, okay. So there you go. You can't treat him ancient. We're all around the same age.
Yeah, you can treat me as the ancient one. So,
yeah.
All right, let's see if he hops in here anytime soon. But yeah, we were just talking with Michele here before we came on. But what do you got going now in the future? Like, I know you got to get a little vacay, but after that, what's up?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I've got a couple of races actually. I've got a half Ironman triathlon in September. I got a marathon in October. And I got a half marathon before that in September as well. And then aside from that, just working, just, doing the things with the dogs and the boyfriend, just living life. Oh, there you go.
There we go. He's here. We made it. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you guys?
We are fantastic. Glad to have you. Thanks so much to both of you for doing this. So we'll just get started. Let's welcome in the second fittest man on earth and his coach, Pat Vellner and Michele Letendre. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll ask Pat the same question we just asked Michele before we started recording here. What do the next couple of weeks look like for you as you come down from the high of the CrossFit Games?
Michele, you want to go first?
I already said my things.
That's what happens when you show up late to the party, Pat.
I mean, normal life is the thing. I don't get the luxury of a big holiday. I actually, right after the games, I spent some time with my parents. Got to visit them and kind of revert to being a child myself for a few days. But now I got back home. On Tuesday night late, was delayed getting home, was at work on Wednesday, and I'm just doing normal life for a little bit. I've got a couple weddings coming up, so I think probably I'm not in a rush to get back to high intensity training. Went for a jog today with my dog. I'm kind of trying to do the low intensity.
The athlete does low intensity stuff, chilling out with the family. The coach is now in full training mode. My season just started.
Yeah.
Are you guys switching roles now?
I wouldn't be able to coach Michele. She's too difficult.
There's definitely some history behind that. Well, all right. Well, what makes Michele difficult as an athlete is she a downhill operator? She doesn't take any advice from old Pat.
I think I don't know. I've never coached Michele, so I'm just teasing her because I know that I'm difficult sometimes. So I think that my guess is we're quite similar. I think we bonk heads over certain things because we're very similar. So if I had to guess, the things that make me challenging at times are probably the same things that would make Michele a challenge at times.
Okay, so Pat, what do you think makes you challenging, and then Michele, what makes Pat challenging?
Ooh, I want to hear this.
Ooh, let me think of how I can put this delicately.
Self-awareness.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not, I would say from the outside looking in, you would think I don't enjoy what I do very much sometimes. So I think that I latch on to things that I don't like. I can be kind of negative at times. And it's kind of how my process of figuring out how to make things easier for myself and like understanding that what we do is really hard and it's going to be hard and you just have to kind of accept that. But it takes me some time to get to the acceptance phase. So I think I go through several stages of grief and I forget all of them off the top of my head, but I think anger is near the top of the list. Sometimes I'm quick in that. I get frustrated about various things quickly. And then we kind of work our way through those things and then it's okay. But I'm always trying to solve the problem. And that's why I like competing. I'm forever in search of this way that I'm going to be able to do the workout that's going to make it easy and I'll win. and it doesn't exist. Like what we do is really hard. It's always going to be hard. So I feel like I'm always trying to solve it. Like there's a puzzle and there's a right answer, and there just isn't. And then at some point I get to that solution, and I'm like, well, we kick around various approaches to things, and Michelle's got good insight that I sometimes don't see. So after we kind of talk through or yell through that for a little bit, then we're good to go.
Yeah, that's right. I think the hardest thing with Pat, it's like you have sometimes some athletes where you're like, all right, I think this is the way to do it. And then your dream athlete is like, okay, I'll do it like that. And then I know Pat, and he's like, him and I are close in age. So one of the things that happens when you coach athletes that are close in age is like it's more of a partnership kind of thing. So I'm like, how can I tell Pat that he kind of has to go all in on this without making it me sound like I'm saying you have to go all in on this? But like over the years, I've kind of figured it out, because I mean, Pat gets, and in all honesty, Pat gets very defensive when things scare him. And I was like that also. When you're faced with something that's, is going to be hard and you want to control it, you kind of have a tone that is more aggressive or whatnot. So once I kind of understood that's how Pat's processing works, it always comes down to, at the end of that long like discussion process of, let's say, before an event, it always ends up like, all right, what do you think? And then he's like open to suggestions, but you have to let him kind of boil the idea over for a certain amount of time. And then once he's kind of looked at it all throughout every angle, he's easier to kind of talk to. But I think the hardest thing with Pat is more that. But aside from that, having those intellectual conversations about events and challenges isn't difficult. I don't have to push him to do any work. I don't have to convince him that what's on the table is going to be good for him. I don't have to convince him to eat his veggies. He's going to complain the whole fucking time he's eating vegetables, but he's going to eat them. He's going to eat them because he knows it's good for them. So for him, it's hard, but it's not.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that, because we got a top comment was coming from exactly where I wanted to go off of that response, is that the intervals test that Pat most recently posted about on Instagram, I think encapsulated a lot of what you guys were discussing in terms of, Pat trying to find the part where it's easy and you win. And it seemed like, at least for a moment, he was in that flow state for a little bit. And then also you guys kind of nitpicking it apart, maybe even having a disagreement, and then ultimately trying to find some sort of compromise or way forward. And, Alice's cough, you win it on the burpees, was a reference to what Pat said. So I'm curious, Pat, it did seem like, I'll start with you. It did seem like you found that spot, the sweet spot in that test. And you said it doesn't happen, but I'm curious if it happens often enough to be able to recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, actually. I saw Jeff posted something recently too about the Helena workout, which was very similar, where like sometimes you hit a pace or you hit a zone, and it's just like things are moving and you can't make a mistake. And that level of flow state is sometimes rare, and it's what you always chase. But like I joked about after that workout, like that was the easiest workout I've ever done at the games. And I won it standing up, and like watching people hit the finish mat, I felt like I did a different workout. And it's just like when you sometimes like you just get in a feeling like that, and the adrenaline kind of carries you through to the end. Like you get a few of those in a career, and like they're cool. Like it's weird. Like it feels like a weird moment. But you should have seen what we were doing before, though. Like I was trying to figure out every which way I could do. Like if I could roll over the box for the box get over, that would like save time, and like my feet would come down right. And, like I was trying to figure out a way to do it that somebody else might not see. It wasn't obvious, and so we were looking at it all the time. You're watching the other heats go and seeing where whoever won the heat, where did they separate? Like what's happening here? And you kind of listen to some chatter, and at the end of the day, you just like, it doesn't really matter. You make a decision that's good for the tools that you have, right? So fortunately, I'm good at all the things in that workout, and it was a really good event for me. But we just kind of, I knew I wanted to row fast, especially with some of the guys that we had in that heat. I think you can get frantic in an event like that if you fall behind. So you don't want to be feeling like you need to push somewhere a lot harder than you can. And you make those little mistakes. You touch a box, you do something, it can set you back a few seconds really fast. So I did row harder than I think Michele wanted me to row, but it was fine. I didn't row outside of my capacity. And then I think after the first interval at the halfway point, you can kind of be like, okay, can I do that again? Or do I have to back off a little bit or what? But to her credit, and like I said this in the post, and I'll say it on any podcast, she was right about the burpees. Like
Oh yeah.
I came off and I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like that was where the separation got made, and being smooth and fast there, like that was the place, at least for me, to attack the workout. I didn't fall behind on the row, but I didn't gain any time on the row. So that was me being stubborn and feeling like I had still some level of autonomy on the decision making of this workout. It's like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And then at the end of the day, the burpees was what won it for sure.
Oh,
Does your stubbornness ever get the best of you when it comes to like live in person competition, when, maybe Michele gives you feedback on what she wants to do and you get out there and you're like, nah, screw it, I'm going to do this?
I mean, it's a race, right? So at the end of the day, yeah, like sometimes there's things. The hard part about our sport is you never know what kind of hand everybody else is playing with either, right? So some people come out fast, and you don't want to fall way behind the lead pace in anything. It's sometimes hard to crawl back like 8, 9, 10 places over the course of an event. So really often you could have a plan, and then you watch the heat go before you go, or the heat starts, and you're like, holy, we got to go a lot faster than I thought we had to go. And maybe a more conservative pace near the start is going to pay off, but sometimes there's just not quite enough time. And I made that mistake this year on the bike. I was too conservative in the start and I got stuck. And then on the run, we were like, that's not going to happen again. You have to be overly aggressive. And like that. And then it killed me at the end. Like, and I lost 5 places at the end, which is a really painful way to finish an event. Feel like it's slipping away near the finish. But, at the end of the day, which was the right choice? Like, I don't know. And sometimes you just need to, I'm stubborn in both ways, right? Like for that run, I was like, this is what we decided to do, and I'm going to do it. Even if at halfway I feel like it's a really bad idea and I need to slow down. It was like, this is the commitment. Like, yeah, it's going to suck, and it's 5K, and you got to it's going to suck at the end. Whereas, I think we always make this little decisions on the field, and sometimes, you get scared and it's fear-based, and you're like, man, I'm not sure. And it's the little decisions like that over the course of a weekend that lead to success or failure. Like nobody does it perfectly. So of course, sometimes I've made decisions that have bit me in the ass, and sometimes I've stubbornly stayed on a path that's panned out really successful. So the more you compete, I think the better you hope to get a handle on that decision-making, but nobody does it perfect. And I've had some, at the games this year that I would take back in a heartbeat, but the way I like to think of it is if I get to take back a couple of my bad decisions, so does everybody else. And you probably would find that in the end, it would be a wash, and most people would kind of end up in the same place. So.
Well, that's a good point. And an example of the stubbornness sometimes is the ski erg event with the squats. And I remember our conversation was like, Pat, you're going to have to start the ski hard. And it was, I don't want to do that, and we had that conversation when we watched the first heat go and the following heats. We realized very quickly that all the squats, no matter how hard you skied, were pretty much the same speed. And so the only place where you can kind of increase or slow would be on the skis. So it's those conversations happen, and the stubbornness is important, because if you working with someone like Pat, what's great is that if he's stubborn about something, the decision rests on his shoulders all the time. And you have to, the athlete is the one that has the most control over the situation and understanding of the situation. Because when you're watching from the stands, you're looking at the athlete go and you're like, shit, that wasn't the plan. But Pat knows the guys better than anyone. He knows himself better than anyone. And if his decision is to go hard on something, and even though we had initially talked about going slower, but he feels like if he doesn't, he could lose ground. I'd rather him be stubborn about that, because what's the point of kind of developing experience if the plan is always made before the actual event. So it's good that he's stubborn like that. Like those are decisions that are really important, and you have to trust the athlete, in this case Pat, to make those decisions so that he can, take a win. But this is why it's fun to coach someone like that. Like Pat's going to take risks because he understands risk versus rewards a lot better than I would sitting back, and having no idea what he's feeling in the moment of,
A lot of this we've talked so far involves, conflict resolution, right? And it's an important element in any sort of partnership, coach, athlete relationship, anything like that, because in the heat of competition, conflicts will arise. Is there a hard line that either of you have in say when there's a disagreement on strategy or approach to something, or is there something that like you have to put your foot down? I think someone mentioned the kind of shut up and get it done mode, where eventually it's like, hey, like I got to put my foot down in one direction, whether it's the athlete or coach. And I don't know if that exists for you or if it's something you just constantly have to kind of massage.
I think we have lots of disagreement over lots of things. And I think, I can be not so gentle sometimes. And I think Michele has been good at weathering that storm from time to time. And I think at the end of the day, like ultimately the decision falls on me, right? Like I'm the one who then has to execute the plan. So it's feedback. Everything is feedback. You're getting it from, what you see, what your coaches are saying, what people around you are saying. And then that's why I think a lot of my processes before events and before in planning is trying to think so much about everything, taking all the information I can. And we talk through a million scenarios, and Michele and I, we just hit the ball back and forth a lot. And then at the end of the day, whatever we decide or whatever I decide to do, I'm usually pretty bought in on, because I feel like we've looked at it from every way we possibly could. So, once we come to a decision, it's like, it's very definitive and we kind of tend to execute it. I think that Michele's been good at times at knowing when to just step back and be like, we've done it. We've talked about all the stuff. Like there's nothing left to talk about. You have to just make a decision and then like walk away. But I think sometimes what she'll do if we're warming up and I'm still like dealing with it and not sure, she'll just like movement helps, right? Like you just start doing something. She'll just sit me on a bike and be like, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to sit on the echo bike and you're going to do some intervals and then you'll figure it out. And then once you've got to start moving, you can't ruminate quite so much. And I don't know. So there's something about finally like getting things in your hands and doing things and seeing how it feels that helps you kind of work out the problems as well.
Yeah. I don't think we've ever had an actual event where we completely disagreed on how to approach it. I think we've had events where we've talked about it a lot more and there's way more to it. Like that interval workout is a good example where I think that's the workout we probably talked about the most. And you're totally right, Pat. Like there's a process to me getting to kind of get the overthinking out. And it's just basically doing that row interval pace and then doing some jumps and doing some things. And once that aerobic system is really fired up and he's a little bit too tired to think, then it's like, all right, once we'd finished that specific warm up for that event, he knew exactly what he was going to do. So sometimes you have to interrupt, but it's so rare that we totally disagree. And in the end, I'm never right. It's like, as the coach, I'm never looking to be right. It's always nice when it's said on public television that I was right. But the most important thing is that Pat feels confident in what he's going to do, whether it's the right or the wrong thing that he's going to do. Because if he goes on the floor and he's like, this is what I'm going to do, and you're all in, there's a little bit less overthinking. And we were super confident before that bike event that people were going to blow up and that this and that. And it was a hard lesson to realize that, like, no matter how fast people start, like, they're going to hold on. People at this level are going to hold on. And that was the lesson. And so it was kind of like, okay, we got to stop pacing ourselves around the possibility of other people kind of failing. But we went at that in that event with a plan that we were both confident with. And I think Pat was confident with going, and it just didn't turn out the way we wanted to. But in the end, even if I think that it's the wrong approach, if it's the approach that that I feel that the athlete will not let go of, then say I have no reason to pull it back, because that's just going to add more stress to the process.
I'll say I like the go hop on a bike and warm up the aerobic system first. I might take that that home. It's like the lollipop before the doctor's office, you know.
If you're breathing really heavy, it's hard to argue. So
Pat's always doing echo bikes.
Yeah. What is it about you that allows you to consistently come back from, you know, putting yourself in a hole? Like you just it's just expected. Not that we expect you to do poorly on the opening event, but we know that if you do, you're coming back. So like, part of me thinks you got that from your parents, because we met your parents. They were hanging out one night at the hotel, and they could not have been more chill. It was, I went, oh, this is where it comes from. And I think this is when you were still battling, like, oh yeah, Pat's going to be fine. And they were talking to the Medeiros family, and it reminded me of that meme, you know, like first time, your parents were like trying to help the Medeiros family sort of work through it. And they just
with the button of your face on them.
They were so relaxed. And I was like, oh, this must be where it is. But yeah, what allows you to consistently do that?
I'd be curious if they would be that relaxed about it if I hadn't done it 5 times. I think at this point, it's kind of easy to be relaxed about it, but you know, the first couple times it might be a little more touch and go. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I don't think. I think there's, you know, I played a lot of sports, and a lot of my sports that I did play, like gymnastics was a great example of one where we competed 6 events. And if you crashed on the first event and your all around score was scrapped, like you can still make event finals on 5 different events. Like you have to have a short memory on things like that. And I think, you know, there's some confidence that comes with experience. And, you know, my wife actually had on like maybe the Thursday night, or I don't know, Thursday night or Friday. I can't remember if it was after I blew up on the alpaca or before, but like she was having a conversation with me about it. And I was a bit nervous about a few things. And we were talking through some of the events that were announced. And she just looked at me and she's like, "You're too good to be scared. Like, what are you talking about?" And I was like, "Oh, you're kind of right." And, you know, I've got enough experience in these things that it's not a lot of things I can look at, and I don't have to win them all. And I think there's a lot of confidence that comes with having done it a few times, being like, okay, not only do I think it's possible to come back, like I'm not trying to convince myself that. I know it's possible. I've done it several times. And now it's just the fact of doing it. Like now you've just got to actually move your feet, do the thing, and keep pushing forward. So I think that there's some confidence that comes with experience. And I think, you know, we saw a little bit this year of some of the younger guys that struggled with things like that and couldn't quite put it back together. And so I think there's a big difference between thinking you can do it and knowing you can do it. And I think that, you know, I've got a good head. Like I've dealt with it enough times that for better or worse, I know exactly what to do and what that feels like and what that looks like. So, I think that that's just a big piece of it. Is you learn it over time, and it's a skill that you learn and you practice. And yeah, I've got more practice than most people.
And to be fair, your parents did say either way, Pat's going to be great for you guys on the media side because he gives you something to talk about.
That's true.
Your mom was like, "Isn't he the best?" Up or down, it's something to talk about.
Had like
right?
a button with your face on it. She was adorable. Like, you two are the best.
My parents have a lot of fun at the games.
Yeah.
They were enjoying themselves. So Pat, how are your fingertips doing? Speaking of alpaca.
Good. I just trimmed some of the skin back this morning. You want to see?
Yeah.
Kind of. Give a nice close up.
Oh man.
I hope you don't need to have your fingerprints taken anytime soon. I don't know that you have any.
So they're okay. They're like, you should have seen them on Sunday at the games. Oh, they were bad.
Did they start bleeding on the rope?
Oh yeah.
Was it pure raw
They were
skin?
bleeding on every event I was doing. So I had like on the weightlifting, they were like weeping burn wounds, and these two were bleeding.
Oh.
So I had my fingers taped for the weightlifting, and I had to change the tape every lift because it would weep through, and then I would get like slippery on the bar. So like Helena, I had like a fat wet patch on the bar where I was doing bar muscle ups. I had to jump up in a different spot every time. It was not great. Like my skipping rope, I just pulled it out of my bag today. It's covered in blood. And
solid.
The Sunday they were super infected and not in great shape. I woke up and I was like, these two were still kind of closed. These two were really open, and these had like fat, huge blisters. and when I drained them, it was like very yellow pus. And so I looked at my wife, who's a family doctor, and I said, "Hey, how does this look to you?" And she just kind of said, they're not going to fall off today. So
Oh my
You're
God.
fine. Get out
when you
there.
come home, "Hey, you might as well make it worth it, buddy." So I said, "Yeah, all right."
I want to ask you about that event, but first, I was standing near Michele, and you were almost the only coach that in that moment you were quiet. You had your hands kind of close to your face. Every time that you saw Pat drop, you kind of would just put your head down, regroup yourself, look back up. What was going through your head? And then, Pat, during those rope climbs, I guess what was going through yours?
Oh man. First of all, it's never crossed my mind that I would ever see Pat fail a rope climb. And it was a rude awakening, and it's kind of it's not something on like that movement. I was very confident that he was going to get through, and to be honest, that was a win workout for Pat. Like when I saw that workout, I'm like, he can win this workout, and so it wasn't going to be a bad start to the day. And then that happened, and anyone who's watched any workouts with athletes failing rope climbs, that it's like an insurmountable mountain. People just keep failing, and it just hurts in every sense of the word. And those are probably the worst experiences as a coach that, like, I've seen it happen with other athletes. And so it's heartbreaking. And I kind of was like, shit, people think are probably that I'm mad or anything because I yelled out like explicit words. But the reality is that because one, I know what that feels like failing something, that like it's heart-wrenching. And then two, it's like on top of that, Pat's so good at that movement. Like, how could this be happening? And then it's just you kind of just you just have to like it's part of your role as a coach. You kind of have to live the suck. And luckily for me, Pat is someone that bounces back mentally really quickly. So I knew that it was going to be a hard couple of minutes after that event, that we were going to have to kind of pick up some pieces, but it's just hard to watch. It's hard to watch because you're just wondering I'm just thinking, what is Pat thinking? Like, was that risk really worth it? And it was a complete shock for me. Because it's just such a strong movement for Pat. But at the same time, I know why he did it. I've seen him do it before at Rogue, where he was one jerk away from winning Rogue, and then he just caught the clean wrong and went for the jerk anyway, and he missed it. So that's one of the things I admire most about Patrick, is that he's going to take those risks for a win. And there are so few athletes that are willing to take that kind of risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the dark side of that type of risk taking. But I would have, being Pat, I would have done the same thing. I would have gone up when he went up, and I would have done the exact same thing. Logistically speaking, it makes a lot of sense that happens. Like, the rope is high, it was humid. As you climb the rope, there's less and less chalk. You're gripping more and more. The ropes are new, so they have oil. Like, it's just an accident waiting to happen. So it just sucked a lot. It just sucked a whole lot. It's just like not a feeling that's fun to go through. But I was comforted by the fact that I've seen Pat screw up before, and I've seen how he reacts to it. So I knew that it wasn't going to be like a complete tragedy.
Yeah, it's hard to watch, I think. It's hard to be there, but it's hard. You just especially a movement like that, you just you have to sit and wait, and it feels silly. Like, you're like, I gotta sit here for 2 minutes now and do nothing. And so it's just it's hard. And then it kind of snaps you out of the workout. Like, you just I stumbled my hand at the top there, and it was like a mistake. I was pushing to try to catch at the end there, and whatever. I stand by the decision. I think I felt confident going up the rope. I wouldn't have tried if I didn't feel confident. And then, when you come down, I had firstly, I hit the mat, and I was like, okay, this is a big problem. And then the way my fingers were, I was like, this is an extra big problem.
Ooh.
Not only have I basically bombed this event now, I also were 4 events into the weekend and I've shredded my entire hand. So I kind of sat there for a second, like, well, one thing at a time, like we got to figure out how to get up the rope. So I took a big break for the first one and I tried a second time and kind of failed it at the top or like on the descent again. And it got harder and harder because my hand was bleeding. So it was like, I'm like rubbing chalk in my open wounds, trying to like make sure it's going to have enough to stay dry-ish until I can get up and down the rope. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy I got it. I think it was important for me to successfully do the rep. I was very frustrated though. Like I think I managed to let it go pretty quick. It was annoying, and as the competition wore on, I was wishing I had those 50 points or something like that. Like in the end, I was kind of like in a race for the podium, and it should have been Jeff and Roman and I well clear of the pack. Like it shouldn't have been close. And I made it close. I let it be close. And that was like, so I was kind of kicking myself. It was haunting me a little bit every day. I'd wake up and be like, all right, what's the goal today? And I kind of, after that event, I made a plan to be like, all right, that knocked me into 12th or something like that. Plan was to try to get back into the top 10 by the end of the day, into the top 5 by the end of the Saturday, into the top 3 by the end of Sunday. Like that should be very doable. We got a lot of weekend left. You just need to start chipping away and make no more mistakes. So I zoomed out and made that plan. And then by the end of the weekend, when I was like, I'm only with the point spread in the top 20, I'm only a few points clear of those 4th, 5th guys that are hunting. And every morning I'd wake up and be like, all right, where are we at on the leaderboard? Who do I have to stay ahead of? And look at the spread and think, boy, it'd be nice to have another 40 points in my pocket. And then we'd move on from that. It was like one of those things. I didn't dwell on it long, but every now and then it would pop into my head to be like, man, remember when you did that? walked across for a 5th place on that one. But, oh well, 27th is great, I guess. So, anyway, it's fine. You have to take risks sometimes, and they're calculated risks, right? Like there's it's not like I just guessed and closed my eyes and threw up a prayer. Like I felt fine. I paced the second round. I felt really good on the last round of rope climbs, and made a mistake near the top and fumbled the rope, and that's all it takes, right? Those high risk movements are super costly.
I imagine that, obviously not having the skin on your fingers is a constant reminder of that mistake, but being separated from it now, is there any sense of pride around like, hey, I literally didn't have skin on my hand and I still rallied and put myself on the podium again?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a little bit. And I mean, to be honest, I don't know how much people knew about it, but I definitely, over the course of the weekend, I was getting more and more annoyed at all the like upper body hanging gymnastics movements we were doing, and how like every weight movement we did was a sandbag that I had to like pinch grip like this.
Yeah.
So like every time they'd announce a new workout, I'd be like, great. Like I thought on Sunday after the sandbag muscle ups, I was like, it's cool. I should have done better at that one, but I was just like, I think I was getting a little tapped. And then I was like, it's fine. We're done. Like, I don't think I'm going to have to really grip anything and like pull again. And then we had that sled pull with the rope. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Because the rope is like the worst thing on it too. And I just like, couldn't believe it. So I felt like I just getting kicked while I was down back to back to back. But I don't know. It was like, it is in the end, all's well that ends well, right? Like having it turn out fine. I think it's something you can look back at and kind of laugh and be like, cool, I overcame that challenge. But yeah, it was definitely, you start your warm up and you're like gingerly grabbing things and being like, it's like putting your toes in the water when it's cold and you're like, ooh.
Yeah. I had that in my...
Once you go, you just have to do it. And then you like, don't even think about it for the next 10 minutes. And then at the finish line, you're like,
That happened to me in 2015 when we did Murph and I had no more skin in both my palms. And I remember doing the snatch event after that workout, and I never wear, like back then we didn't wear like gymnastics grips or anything. And so I never wear grips. And then I remember picking up the empty bar to get ready for my warm up and just like immediately letting it go and looking at my boyfriend and being like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And then you just move him and you move him and you move him, and the throbbing eventually just subsides, and then you go numb, and then so you do the thing. And then once you're done the thing, you're like, oh, the throbbing's back, and just like, all right, I'm not gonna move my hands for like a few. And then we had another event with more hands, and it was just like, and that kind of throbbing wears you down. It just tires you. So like the fact that it was on Friday morning, that's one of the second or third thoughts that came to me, was like, fuck, like that throb, like I know what it feels like. And it's just having in French, the word is boulet. It's like having a weight attached to your ankle that you just have to drag around all the time. And it's like extra fatigue, you know?
But hey, you guys seem to rebound well. I think, Michele, you made the finals of that snatch speed ladder. You were fifth in that one, I think. And then Pat comes back having to pull the rope again and finishes second. So I don't know. Maybe you guys are fueled by hate and anger, I guess. That could be
and half a hand and half fingers.
Well, and you can wear it as a badge, Pat. I remember you saying something about the year Fraser, when he tore up his knee and still won, and you were like, he held that. He came back with like the knee brace, and all of you guys were like, dang it, that happened and he still won. Now you can show it off now and be like, look, I got no fingerprints, but I still beat you. Own it.
It's funny though, you know, it's interesting. Like everybody's dealing with something, right? And you see some people who hacked themselves up on the bike or did this or that. It's just a long weekend, right? And you know, if you get through it unscathed, all the power to you. But it's often you're going to have something happen, and so you kind of, to a certain degree, have to expect a little bit of that. You hope it happens later in the weekend. You hope it's not super significant. Like, I think this was one that it's annoying. Like, it's your hands. You're using them on everything.
Yeah.
So that's just like, it sucks. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to just like, you can do it three things. Like, you can either quit, you can kind of keep doing and really dwell on it and let it annoy you, or you can kind of just keep going and move on and let it be what it'll be, right? So have as good an attitude around it as you can. And I tried to do that, but in my private moments when I was, you know, wiping my bum, I didn't enjoy it that much.
Oh no! I didn't even think.
Did you have to switch hands? Like, is that the dominant hand that you like?
No, I'm kidding. It's my other hand. But,
all right, okay.
I'm just thinking that, like, I would save it for when I was like, I get back to my room at the end of the day, and I would hold my hand like this and scream, try to sleep. And when I was on the venue, when I was at work, I tried to just let it flow off me. But
Mm-hmm.
you'd get home at the end of the workday, and it would, you'd scream into the pillow a little bit.
Michele, I asked you this a couple years ago, and I'd be interested to, I want to ask you it again, but with the success that, you had and Carolyn Lambray had as female coaches in the space, both putting athletes on the podium, why aren't there more female coaches in the space right now?
Oh God. That's a pretty hefty question. It's a big question. It's a hard job. And I can't answer that with a large perspective because I'm a woman and that's the only worldview I have. But it's a difficult job. And it's not, one of the things that made me successful as a coach was my experience. And then, so that's in addition to that, like, am I a successful coach now because I had that experience and that gave me credibility? Like, I don't know why there aren't more women. I can think of many reasons. I wish that there were more. I think we offer something unique and different. But in reality, it's a very intense job. You're always on, always on. It's hard to separate your life from work because, and I found that as a CrossFit athlete as well. Like when you're an athlete, you're all in the sport and it's pretty much your whole life, and the people around you close to you have to be in it with you or very confident and let you be in that space and see you very little. But like as a coach, you're always on all the time. Pat texts me at every moment of the day with a million questions that I have to answer. And there are competitions that are on the weekends. Like it's a really intense job, and there's a lot of yourself that you put out there. So it's a very draining position. It's a very draining job. Like my mistake at the beginning of my career was getting super emotionally involved with everybody. because I felt like that's what I needed to do. And that drained me quite a bit. I had a couple of really tough years because of that. But then you start to learn how to separate yourself. And that's something that I don't know if it's a sex thing but if it's just me, but that was a big learning experience where you have to just separate yourself and understand that, you know, being a coach is one part of you and it's not all of you. That said, the practical reasons why there are not a lot of women coaches, and it's not just in our sport, I think it's just there's a credibility issue for a lot of people. I mean, like, female coaches in gyms live this all the time. I can't begin to tell you how many times in my early coaching career, not competitive athletes, where I would have kind of men just dismissing my cues and dismissing my thought. And it's not unique to me. Everybody goes through that. I got so many messages from my recent posts about that. And then I even got one message someone sent me by mistake, where they shared a post that I had mentioned that someone had apologized to me after me going to the CrossFit Games for the first time. So it's a client at the gym I was working at. I made it to the CrossFit Games, and then he only started kind of listening to me after I made it to the games. And this woman sent the post to me by mistake saying, "Oh, all I have to do is make it to the CrossFit Games." Just to give you an example of how many women get credibility issues from men in the fitness industry and in the sport industry. So it's a shame. It's a reality. And not everyone is like that. I mean, Patrick trusts me and my capacity to be his coach. And I thank him for that. And I've had a lot of athletes that have worked with me and that didn't give that a second thought. But I can see how it can be intimidating. And even today, like, you know, I'm a 5'1", 130-pound person in a floor space where it's like you have 6 feet men that are 200 something pounds. It's intimidating. Going and speaking your mind to those types of people is intimidating, no matter how credible, good, or smart you are. It's just like, if you're a little bit self-conscious, which I believe most women are in a field that's so much dominated by men, it's hard to navigate. So there's a lot of questions that you ask yourself. There's a lot of things that you think of that normally, like, some people wouldn't even think twice. So it's a very debilitating kind of self-doubt that happens. But being how I am and how I've always had self-doubt, and I think that self-doubt has always allowed me to progress and make me better. I use it as fuel. I just hope that women out there seeing Caroline bringing Jeff to the top of the podium, I mean, like, kudos to her. Like, plus, I bet you tons of people are going to dismiss her qualities and her capacities because Jeff is her partner. And I've heard it before. Like, I don't know if Caroline knows this, but I've heard people dismiss her as a coach because he's her partner. And we wouldn't do that to a male coach. Like, Shane doesn't get that because he coached Tia, but I've heard it from other people about Caroline. So it's just like, you have to, it's just like, it's just a tough position to be in, but we do offer something and we have a unique perspective. And I'm not going to sit here and say that my coaching is exactly like another male coach. Like, in theory it is, but it has a unique flair to it and a different perspective. And there are things that I think that help Pat, you know, like when we were talking about the chipper workout with the pig and he had to do 100 wall balls and he didn't think twice. It's like, I'm going to do 100 wall balls. And I'm like, I don't know about that. You know, like, you have to think about it more. Wall balls for Pat are an easy movement, but when you're combining it with two movements that are overhead, all of a sudden your arms don't have the same reach and torque. And that's something that I know, and that a lot of shorter people or shorter athletes know and stuff like that. So there's a unique perspective that comes with that. There's creativity that comes with that. Like, the progressions that I've had to go through to do certain movements, and other female athletes that have gone through to do certain movements, can be very useful to train elite level athletes. Like, Pat's done banded pull-ups in training in order to increase his endurance. And it's not because he can't do it. It's a creative way to work with your elite level athletes at getting them to a higher level. So we do bring something to the table. And I've said this before, but if there are female athletes female coaches out there that need help and that want guidance, I'm open to talk about it, because it's something that I shied away from for a long time, because I didn't want to be that girl. I didn't want to be that person that's like, well, what about the women? We do this, we do that. You know, it's always like that. You always have to speak out louder to kind of be heard. But I'm fully ready to embrace it, because I think it's clearly there's a need for it. I think that there are women out there coaching. Like when you go to the warm-up area, there are tons of female coaches, but they're in the adaptive side, they're the age group side, they're working with athletes that are maybe not the elite level, but I want to see more women there. I want to feel less alone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And kind of just going off of that, I mean, we talk about CrossFit as a sport that kind of like externally, if you're just focusing in, it looks like it's really celebrating equality, because men and women are both competing at the same competition, and they're going like this heat and then that heat. And women are lifting barbells, which historically isn't something that women typically are known for. Do you think that it's just still a delay in the change of tide when it comes to men having that buy-in of a woman being able to teach them Olympic lifts or how to gain weight when it comes to muscle and things like that?
I think you're right. I think CrossFit in that sense does. Like CrossFit is probably, I think, at the forefront of that fight. It's not perfect. Where I think we can see more from the CrossFit community as a whole is putting emphasis on those female decision makers. Like CrossFit doesn't have a lot of female KOLs. Like they don't, like CrossFit has a lot of female trainers, but we don't see a whole lot of females in top level positions in the CrossFit Games staff or in other staff. But like they're there, but they're just not as present as other men, other people in the organization. And I think, yes, I think with the female athletes kind of visually leading the way for that, I think it definitely opens up the opportunity for men kind of thinking a little bit broader for that. So yeah, I think for sure we're all going in the same direction, in the right direction. I think that it's less of a problem than it used to be, or than hopefully in other sports. But if anything, I'm proud to be a part of it, because yeah, like, you know, I think of tennis because I'm a huge tennis fan. Like I don't know any female tennis coaches. None. There's none of them. I don't see any on TV. There probably are tons, but the big ones, like, they're not there. So it just feels like immersed in the CrossFit world. It just like, yeah, there's more, and they're going to be there. And hopefully with Caroline and I coaching male athletes, because that's a huge thing too. Like we coach not only top level athletes, but we coach top level male athletes. So it's proof that it's like, it's definitely not my size, you know, like it's and I mean, so yeah, hopefully this will open the ideas. But to be honest with you, like most of the athletes, like a lot of athletes that I've coached on a one-on-one are men. Like right now, all the athletes that I coach personally, they're all guys. And in the past, I've got requests from mostly guys. So yeah, it's, for sure it's changing.
Yeah. And this kind of comes from a question that was posed on social media from Ellen O'Neill. How did your guys' coach athlete relationship start? Because Pat, you were on a team in 2015, right? And that was you were still competing, Michelle. So how did that eventually that connection get made?
This is a good story. Michelle, do you want to tell it? Or
Ooh.
I could tell some of it. So Pat and I actually trained together in 2016. It was my last year and it was his first. And Pat saw firsthand what I was like as an athlete. And I think he this is where him and I are very similar. Like I had very similar reactions to certain events. And I kind of feel bad because I feel like paved the way for that negative defensiveness. But yeah,
you're
so
the one that has to deal with it, so it's okay.
Yeah, lots of life lessons learned. You know, being a coach is a very you learn a lot about yourself coaching people. But yeah, so we trained together in 2016 for my last year and his first. Pat, I'll let you tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, so even before that, actually, I went to school at University in Montreal, and I worked out at a gym that Michelle was actually one of the part owners of for a while.
No,
You part
manager.
owner? Manager. And
Manager.
so I saw Michelle training a little bit when I was there, and I was just kind of learning. So it was cool. It was like motivation to see someone who is a prominent games athlete there training. And then when I switched from team to individual, I had actually graduated that year. So I was staying in Montreal for the summer to train because my now wife was going to school still there. And then she abandoned her program to go to a different program in Calgary, which is on the other side of the country. So I suddenly ended up homeless in Montreal. So because I was staying with her, and I was trying to figure out what to do, and like, should I just go back out west and figure something else out? And then Michelle, like my coach at the time, who was a good friend of Michelle's as well, and Michelle very graciously offered that I could come stay with her and her partner Fred, and then just train with them for the summer as we got ready for the games, because she thought, I'm training anyways. And so we worked out a bunch together that year. I stayed with Michelle and Fred, and we got to know each other super well. And then it was a great, successful year for me, obviously. And Michelle had a good year to finish off her career. We went and did the Invitational together that year, was in Toronto. And that was Michelle's last competition in CrossFit, was Team Canada on Canadian soil, which is pretty cool. And then she retired after that. And I know I spoke to some other people because I was kind of looking for a change of coach anyways. My coach was kind of done coaching elite individuals. And so he had said like, hey, you should go talk to Michelle, and she's starting up programming and coaching now. And you guys work together already this summer, and it might be a really good fit. So I didn't really know that she was making that pivot so quickly. And that actually made perfect sense to me, because we had just spent a bunch of time together. And in my mind, I was like, hey, we just did this thing basically anyway, and it went super well for me. So why don't we keep doing that? And so it was nice. And it was, again, like a kind of really organic kind of roll into working with Michelle, but kind of by happenstance, I sort of, my wife bailed, and I ended up kind of on the streets of Montreal, and they adopted me in, and then I've been rolling through ever since.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, he lived with us for like 2 months with 2 dogs, and he's allergic to dogs. So
oh my God.
Oh, that probably didn't go over very well.
Resistance training.
Yeah. I was taping up my feet for like 2 hours before every session. He was always waiting for me. It was fantastic. Like, yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was funny because after the Invitational, just like not thinking of the consequences of me asking Pat to work with me, because he had just podiumed his first year. He podiumed, and I'm like, hey Pat, you want to never before coach, like, I think I can fill in but when I started CrossFit, I actually started coaching almost instantly. I started CrossFit because I found a job there as a secretary, and they were like, yeah, you have to do CrossFit. So that's how I started doing CrossFit. And then once I started doing CrossFit, I was like, this is really great. And I was kind of like overworking secretary. And then I got my level 1, and I started to coach, and then I fell in love with coaching. So I had always knew I wanted to coach, but then when I retired, I wanted to stay in that world, in that competitive world. And so yeah, Pat was my first, in French, the word is cobaye, like a test dummy. And Pat's been great, because every year I ask him all the time, I'm like, I want to try this new thing. Will you do it? Like, here's the goal, and here's how I think it's going to play out and how it's going to work. Do you want to do that with me? And every time it's always like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So he's been really open to all my ideas and things like that. So it's been a great partnership, and I think it's a unique partnership, because I can't think of any other coach that has literally one summer training with, except maybe Ben and Emma Tall now. I think they have that going.
Oh yeah. That's well, I mean, either way, I would love to see that dramatized in some sort of like, documentary style. Pat just wandering the streets of Montreal, and you welcoming him in like a lost puppy, and then building him into this.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rescue.
Yeah.
And I think I benefited a lot from seeing Michelle train for the games in 2016, right? And being around someone who's a veteran athlete. I think we see a lot of young athletes coming into the sport now, and everyone has a different idea of what training means and what it means to prepare for the games. And I think there's a lot of people doing things differently. And so it was cool to see someone with some experience who's been around the block a few times and how they approach training for the games. And, you know, for my money, it's less is more sometimes training for the games, like being specific in the things you approach. It's not just like, oh, you know, regionals or semifinals are done. To prepare for the games, we just need to jack up the volume and intensity even more now and then get ready for the games. We see it sometimes when people come in half cooked, right? Like by the time they hit the floor at the games, they're half dead. And that's just not the way to do it, right? So I'm sure that I would have been one of the guys who would have made that mistake. Like, oh, I just got to go even harder for even longer. So having someone who knows what they're doing and it could sort of rein you in and calm you down and be like, no, we're going to do this today, or we're going to do that. And I think was super beneficial for me to just see and experience early in my career and shape a lot of the way I approach my training now. Like I don't waste training, especially now at 33. I'm doing what I need to do and no more.
Pat, that approach was by default because I was literally broken.
But still, it's like I think it holds a lot of truth. It's like we see a lot of people who can burn out or who come in hurt, and I think we've always made a concerted effort to make that not the case. And so I think it would be different for me to hear it from you versus seeing it beforehand. Because I think it's really easy to have someone say something and you go, yeah, but like, is that really what you were doing when you were training for the games? Like you're at the games so many years and I don't buy it. But I think having the benefit of seeing it and training with you and doing that, it just sort of gives you a different perspective. And, you know, you kind of internalize that a little bit more. So I think it's cool. It's a kind of a unique relationship that we were able to train together, compete on a team briefly at the Invitational, and then pivot into a coaching role. So it's cool. Like, I think there's a lot of mutual respect in our relationship, and it's worked great for us.
Pat, I know we're still only a couple weeks removed from the games, but I imagine your performance finishing second has, you know, one of two, I guess, influences on you. The first being, hey man, I still got it. I can still win this thing. I want to go another year. Or that's a hell of a way to go out. I got nothing left to prove. Maybe I need to back off. I'm curious, which one is it for you and why?
Why would I stop?
I don't know.
Ding, ding, ding. Let's go.
That's exactly, yeah. That's so clearly you answer the question. Like you still got it.
That's just, I mean, they want me to stop, Sean.
I don't want you to stop.
Why would I stop?
It's not you,
like
Sean. It's they. They do, not you,
yeah,
Sean.
Okay, not me.
They want you to stop.
I think it's just like, I'm like, I will say this. I'm not stressed out or freaked out about never winning the games or anything like that. Like, it's not, to me, it's not all or nothing. So I think I love what I am able to do. I think it's amazing. I'm still able to compete at a high level, and I'm going to do it as long as I can. There's a shelf life on sports, and you know, there will be a day where it's not up to me. You will just be done. But as long as it's up to me, I'm going to keep trying to do it.
So you're saying that you're like the preserved lemon of the shelf life. Like, you're going to be around for a while.
Preserved lemon. Is that something they have in Montreal?
It's an Italian thing. They're there for show. They're decorations.
Oh, yes. In the glass jars. Okay, I got you.
So with
they're
that,
there.
So with that being said, Pat, I mean, you have a son, you have a family. How do you still want to be competitive? There's obviously sacrifices that need to be made. So how do you manage that while wanting to be, you know, a great father, great husband, and still be a fantastic competitor?
It's like it's a constant conversation, right? It's evolving all the time. I think my wife has made it very clear that she is excited for the day that CrossFit no longer rules my life. I think that is a very fair thing to hope for. But at the same time, I don't think my family wants to be the reason why I stopped competing before it's time, right? So, you know, while we're doing it, we're going to try to take advantage of some opportunities that exist. And I think it's trying to make sure everybody can come along for the ride and we can enjoy it. For the last few years, we're doing it. But it gets harder and harder for sure. It's ongoing conversations. Everyone's doing more than their share at some point. My wife works a lot too. Like she's not sitting at home holding down the fort. Like she works like crazy. She has a career, and so we don't have family where we live right now. So it's tough. Like we're juggling a lot of things, and so some things I have to say no to because it's just impossible. But we make it work as much as we can, and I think that it's going to be. It makes things a little stressful and difficult at times, but again, nothing lasts forever. So we know this is a short-term problem, and we're hoping to kind of build some cool memories and have some fun things to talk about at dinner parties for the next few decades. So it just comes down to like trying to work as a partnership and make it work. And we have done some, even in the last year, we've made some outrageous decisions and moved mountains to make certain competitions happen and make life happen. And I certainly, when it comes to travel or various commitments that we have, like I'll train at 4 a.m. I'll train at 10 o'clock at night. Like I'll do things that are less than ideal for me. And I like to think of it as just like, maybe you're going to have to do a workout at some other time and at some event. Like, who knows? I'm just like, it's fine. It's good for you. You should be able to do this at this time. And I just try to make sure that I'm doing whatever. I'm still always, crossing my T's and dotting my I's and getting done everything that I need to do. My commitment to this Michele is that I do the work that she sets out for us. And, we plan a path and then she'll create programming, and that's my job. She says it and I do it. So I never skip something. I never take a shortcut. And sometimes that means, you get less hours of sleep, or you have to say no to certain commitments with family and things. But when it's off season and it's time to sort of regroup, these are the times that we're going to go, I'm going to go away with the family for this weekend. We got a couple of things planned for the next couple of weeks before we have to start really ramping back training up again. So I try to make a concerted effort to service those relationships very heavily when we have extra time, and not be trying to climb back into the gym too early. So, you do what you can. It's challenging at times. And I think that the periods like this last week I was spending with my family where I was home. I didn't have to work. I didn't have to do anything. I was just sort of bumming around, and I got to spend like 10 hours a day with my son. Like you really try to enjoy those things and drink them in. And cause then I kicked him to daycare today, like it or not. Like, we got things to do. Mom's working. I've got errands to run, and you're going to daycare today. So life continues to move fast, and so we try to make sure that we're enjoying it when we can. Yeah. But it's teamwork, and it's constant conversations, and there's lots of frustration in the meantime. But again, I think to us, it's a little bit of an everything is temporary situation. So if it ever becomes untenable, then that's it.
We gonna see you at Rogue?
Yeah, I'll be at Rogue.
All right. Competing?
Yeah, Legends.
Oh yeah.
Oh, come on.
I'm still waiting for my invite to Legends. So I don't know.
I'm gonna get on that, man.
Get you
I
out
don't know
there.
I don't know what I got to do for a Legends invite.
You have
you gotta retire.
You got to be a Rogue athlete.
I would love to see you out there just kicking the snot out of Khalipa, though. That'd be hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
We should try to get Michele a Legends invite.
Let's do that. Can we start a petition?
Yeah, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Let's make it
Yeah,
like
we'll make
USA versus Canada again, Let's
There'll
do
be
like
there'll be like one endurance workout that you'll crush people at.
Oh yeah, for sure. Give me a swim, a bike, and a run. Maybe 100 burpees.
Perfect.
love it.
Well, Pat, Michele, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Congratulations on everything. Good luck with the triathlon and the marathon coming up, Michele. I have no idea why you would want to put your body through that, but
It's easier than CrossFit.
is it real? Wow. Okay.
Aww.
Running is never easier than anything. That's
Oh,
sure, but-
goodness. If you knew how liberating running slow is, like you don't have to run
Oh,
fast. In CrossFit, you have to run fast.
Okay.
No.
Now
I
I'm with
only
you.
have slow, and I still don't like it.
That's my only speed. Yeah, same here. But thank you so much for doing this. We really do appreciate it, and enjoy some time off, and hope to see you guys in person soon.
It's our pleasure. I think mine at least.
Thank you. It was great. It was so great.